How to Sell Your Way Through Life by Napoleon Hill. Picture this. A teenager with empty pockets, no fancy connections, and barely any schooling jumps off a freight train in East Orange, New Jersey. His clothes are covered in dust, but he walks with the kind of confidence that makes you do a double take. He's heading straight for Thomas Edison's laboratory. Yeah, that Edison, the most famous inventor on the planet. A secretary stops him at the door. "What's your business here?" The young man doesn't flinch. He doesn't mumble something about looking for work or hand over a crumpled resume. Instead, he looks her dead in the eye and says, with the kind of audacity that should probably be illegal, "I'm going to become Mr. Edison's partner." His name was Edwin C. Barnes, and somehow that bold declaration got him through the door. An hour later, he was working, scrubbing floors in Edison's plant. Now, most people would call this a spectacular failure, a humiliating crash landing after such a grand announcement. But here's where Barnes was different. He didn't see himself as a janitor. In his mind, he was already Edison's partner. He just had to play the long game. For 5 years, he mopped floors, ran errands, did whatever grunt work came his way. But the whole time, he was watching, learning, and keeping that crazy dream burning bright in his head. He wasn't selling products. He was selling himself every single day through his work and his unshakable belief. Then opportunity knocked. Edison perfected a new invention called the Ediphone dictating machine, but his sales team couldn't move it. They didn't believe in it. Barnes saw his opening. He walked up to Edison and said, "I can sell it." And he absolutely crushed it. He sold the Ediphone so successfully that he earned the contract to distribute it nationwide. He made millions. And just like he'd declared 5 years earlier, while scrubbing those floors, he became Edison's partner. That story captures the essence of the book we're diving into today, How to Sell Your Way Through Life, by the legendary Napoleon Hill. You might know Hill from Think and Grow Rich, which has sold over 60 million copies and basically rewired how we think about success. But before that blockbuster, Hill spent decades studying what actually makes people successful, and he discovered something fundamental. No matter who you are or what you do, your success depends on your ability to sell. Not selling vacuum cleaners door to door unless that's your thing. Selling yourself, selling your ideas, selling your vision and your value to the people around you. Hill wrote this during the Great Depression, when the world felt like it was falling apart, kind of like how things can feel today. But his message isn't desperate or grim. It's a powerful, timeless playbook for influencing others, creating opportunities out of thin air, and negotiating your way to a successful, happy life. And here's the best part. It's not about manipulation or trickery. It's about understanding what makes people tick. So buckle up. We're going to uncover the hidden motives that make people say yes. We'll learn the qualities you need to become genuinely influential. And we'll see how the greatest leaders and thinkers in history used these exact principles to build their empires. By the end, you'll have a roadmap not just to land a job, but to create your own opportunities and truly sell your way through life. Let's start with a simple question. What pops into your head when you hear the word salesmanship? For most people, it's not pretty. You probably think of some fast-talking hustler in a cheap suit, trying to sell you something you absolutely don't need. But Napoleon Hill wants us to toss that image in the trash. Real salesmanship, he says, is something way deeper. It's the ability to influence people without irritating them. Think about that. It's not about pressure. It's about persuasion. It's not about taking, it's about cooperating. Hill describes a master salesman not as someone hawking merchandise, but as an artist who can paint word pictures in the hearts of men, a philosopher who understands cause and effect, a mind reader who knows what people are thinking not just from their words, but from their silences. Once you see it this way, you realize something kind of mind-blowing. We're all salespeople, every single day. The politician selling his vision to get votes, the lawyer selling the jury on her case, the preacher selling his sermon to the congregation. When you ask for a raise, you're selling your value. When you're trying to win someone's heart, you're selling the most important product there is, yourself. The world, Hill argues, is one giant, never-ending chain of sales transactions. The difference between crushing it in life and barely getting by is simply the difference between being a lousy salesman and a master salesman. So what's the secret? What's the master key? Hill boils it down to one powerful concept: motive. He says selling is the art of planting in the mind of another a motive which will induce favorable action. That's the whole game. It's not about drowning someone in logic. It's about connecting with a motive that's already deep inside them. A master salesman doesn't push. He simply presents an idea in a way that makes the other person want to act. To show you what this looks like in action, Hill tells this absolutely genius story about Dr. Harper, president of the University of Chicago. Dr. Harper needed $1 million to build a new building on campus. Back then, that was absolutely insane money. He didn't have it, and the usual fundraising routes weren't going to cut it. So what did he do? He didn't launch some boring donation drive. He didn't send out sad letters begging for money. He devised a master plan. He identified two of Chicago's wealthiest men who happened to be bitter enemies. One ran the street railway system. The other was a politician who'd made his fortune partly by fighting against that same company. Dr. Harper picked the noon hour, when he knew the secretary would be at lunch, and walked straight into the railway magnate's private office. The guy was surprised, but Dr. Harper was smooth as silk. "I beg your pardon," he said casually. "I'm Dr. Harper. Just dropped in to share an idea with you." He started not by asking for anything, but by complimenting the man. "I really admire the incredible system you've given Chicago," he said, putting the guy at ease. Then he planted the seed. "It occurred to me," Dr. Harper continued, "that while you've built this great monument to your name, the world's going to forget who built it the moment you die. I'd like to see you build a monument that'll endure forever." He explained that he wanted to offer the privilege of constructing a beautiful granite building on campus, but there was a problem. "Some members of our board," he said with just a touch of regret, "want this privilege to go to Mr. X," and he named the guy's political enemy. "I'm holding out in your favor," he said, "and just came by to ask if you can think of any way to help me secure this rare privilege for you." Then Dr. Harper glanced at his watch, said he was late for a board meeting, and left. The magnate was hooked. He called Dr. Harper's office 3 times before the doctor even got back. The next morning, he was waiting at Dr. Harper's door. He didn't just offer the money. He practically begged Dr. Harper to accept a check for $1 million. Suddenly, he was the salesman, and Dr. Harper was the buyer being persuaded to accept the gift. That, my friend, is master salesmanship. Dr. Harper never asked for a dime. He painted a picture in the man's imagination, built on 2 of the most powerful human drives: the desire for legacy and fame, and the desire for revenge. He made the donation feel not like charity, but like a rare opportunity that had to be won from an enemy. This story reveals the toolkit. Hill identifies 9 basic motives that drive almost everything we do. Learn to appeal to these, and you can influence anyone. 1. Self-preservation, our most primal instinct. 2. Financial gain, the desire for wealth and security. 3. Love, what drives us to care for family and friends. 4. Sexual urge, a powerful creative energy. 5. Desire for power and fame, what Dr. Harper tapped into, the need to be important, to leave a mark. 6. Fear, often used in selling insurance, the fear of leaving loved ones unprotected. 7. Revenge, the other lever Dr. Harper pulled. 8. Freedom of body and mind, the desire to be your own boss. 9. Desire to build and create, the urge to make something new. Every successful pitch, Hill says, is built around one or more of these motives. Your job isn't to create them. They're already there. You just need to discover which one is burning brightest in your prospect and build your case around it. But knowing the motives isn't enough. You yourself have to become the kind of person who can use this knowledge effectively. This leads us to the character of the master salesman. Hill lists a ton of qualities, but we can group them into a few core areas. First, there's the foundation. This is non-negotiable. It includes physical fitness, because a tired body and mind can't project energy. It includes courage, the backbone to face rejection and keep going. And it includes hard work, because no amount of natural talent beats intelligent, persistent effort. Next is the mindset. This is your internal engine. It starts with imagination, the ability to see possibilities and put yourself in the other person's shoes. It requires unwavering faith. Faith in yourself, in what you're selling, and in your ability to close the deal. And it must be powered by enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, Hill says, is contagious. It's a vibration the other person picks up on, and it's way more powerful than any logical argument. Then there's the character. This is who you are when nobody's watching. It includes having a pleasing personality. It means living by the golden rule, genuinely wanting what's best for the other person. And it includes one of Hill's most famous ideas, the habit of doing more than you're paid for. This isn't about being a doormat. It's strategy. It makes you indispensable, attracts attention, and puts the law of increasing returns on your side. Finally, there's the strategy. This means knowing your product inside and out, knowing your buyer, and knowing the steps of a sale. Qualifying the buyer to make sure they're a real prospect, neutralizing their mind to make them receptive, and finally, the art of closing the sale. Now, one of the most interesting parts of the book is where Hill draws a sharp line between cheap flattery and what he calls intelligent promotion. He warns us that flattery is a con artist's tool. It's a psychological trick to make people drop their guard while you pick their pockets. Smart people, he says, hate flattery. They see right through it. But that doesn't mean you should hide your talents in the basement. The world, Hill argues, doesn't beat a path to your door just because you're good at something. You need to be properly promoted. He gives some fascinating examples. Jack Dempsey was a solid boxer, but he only became a world champion raking in millions after promoter Jack Kearns took over his career. Will Rogers was just a little-known rope thrower in vaudeville until showman Ziegfeld promoted him into stardom. Even Theodore Roosevelt understood promotion. When he returned from Africa for a major public event, he secretly arranged for nearly 1,000 paid applauders scattered throughout the audience to guarantee a thunderous ovation that swept the newspapers off their feet. The lesson is crucial. Getting ahead isn't about being fake. It's about strategically and ethically bringing your value to the attention of people who need it. And sometimes, Hill wisely notes, you can't be your own promoter. Just like a guy who cuts his own hair doesn't look better for it, someone handling their own promotion can limit their success. The smarter move is to find someone who believes in you and give them a reason to help market your talents. So we've got the outer game, the strategies, the motives, the promotion. But what about the inner game? How do you actually build faith, enthusiasm, and courage inside yourself? This brings us to one of Hill's core psychological principles, autosuggestion. Autosuggestion is just self-suggestion. It's how you communicate directly with your subconscious mind. Hill describes the subconscious as a broadcasting station that telegraphs your deepest beliefs and feelings to others, whether you realize it or not. If you're filled with doubt, fear, or a lack of belief in what you're selling, your prospect will feel it, no matter how confident your words sound. Every sale, he says, is first made to the salesman himself. To program this broadcasting station, you have to give it clear instructions, but there's a catch. The subconscious doesn't respond to cold, logical thought. It only responds to ideas mixed with deep emotion or feeling. He lists 7 major positive emotions you need to cultivate: sex, love, hope, faith, enthusiasm, optimism, and loyalty. These fuel autosuggestion. When you repeat a command to your subconscious, like, I am a master of my craft, or I will achieve my goal, and you feel it with burning intensity, You're planting a seed your subconscious will work tirelessly to make real. On the flip side, you have to starve the 7 major negative emotions: anger, fear, greed, jealousy, revenge, hatred, and superstition. Even one of these, he warns, can poison your mental broadcast and push away the opportunities you're seeking. That's why a salesman who badmouths the competition is committing career suicide. He's broadcasting negativity, which only attracts a negative response. This idea of mental broadcasting leads to another powerful concept: the mastermind. A mastermind, Hill defines, is the coordination of 2 or more minds, working in perfect harmony for a definite purpose. When 2 minds come together harmoniously, a third, invisible mind is created, a psychic force greater than the sum of its parts. This principle, he says, is the source of all great power. For the ultimate case study in how all these principles come together, Hill dedicates a big chunk of the book to analyzing the man he considered his greatest teacher, Henry Ford. Hill didn't see Ford as perfect, but as the living embodiment of this philosophy. Let's look at how Ford applied these principles. First, a definite chief aim. For more than 30 years, Ford had one single consuming purpose: manufacture and sell a dependable car for the common man. Everything he did served this goal. This gave him laser focus. Second, persistence and faith. Ford's persistence was legendary. When his engineers showed him elaborate plans to change the original Model T, he simply said, "As long as we're selling more cars than we can deliver, we're not making this or any other change." He stuck to his plan until the market forced him to adapt. He had unshakable faith that he could overcome any obstacle, and he viewed temporary defeats not as failures, but as signals to try harder. Third, the habit of doing more than paid for. This was the genius behind his famous $5 a day minimum wage. His competitors thought he'd lost his mind, but Ford knew exactly what he was doing. The move gave him the pick of the best workers in the country. It made every employee self-supervising, because nobody wanted to lose such a sweet deal. And it generated $1 million in free publicity and goodwill. He wasn't just being generous, he was practicing the highest form of salesmanship, selling his workers on giving him their absolute best. Fourth, the mastermind. Ford built 2 powerful mastermind groups. One was his internal team of executives and engineers handling production. The other, and arguably his greatest asset, was his massive network of dealers handling distribution. Through this alliance, he knew his market so well he could predict sales way in advance, letting him manufacture cars more efficiently and cheaper than anyone else. And finally, decision. Ford was a man of quick, firm decisions. He gathered facts, but he didn't paralyze himself with indecision. He understood that a flawed plan put into action beats a perfect plan that never leaves the drawing board. By studying Ford, Hill built a framework for success anyone could follow. This brings us to one of the most practical sections of the book, the master plan for getting a position. If you want a specific job, Hill says, don't just fire off a resume. You need to sell yourself with a strategy that makes you impossible to ignore. Here's his plan. Step 1. Decide exactly what position you want and make a complete list of your qualifications. If they're not strong enough, go prepare yourself until they are. Step 2. Take the list of 17 principles of success. Things like definite aim, self-confidence, initiative, and cooperation, and write out a detailed self-analysis, grading yourself from 0 to 100 on each one. Be brutally honest. Explain exactly why you gave yourself that grade, with specific examples. Step 3. Write a letter to the head of the company. State the position you want, and explain that you're sending a detailed self-analysis based on the 17 principles of success. Then, make an offer so bold it can't be ignored. You say this: "Let me work in the position for 1 month without compensation. At the end of the month, if I haven't demonstrated beyond any doubt that I'm the right person for this role, I'll walk away." Think about the psychology here. You're demonstrating supreme confidence. You're taking all the risk off the employer. You're applying the principle of doing more than you're paid for before you're even hired. You're using showmanship and initiative. You're not asking for a job. You're asking for an opportunity to prove your value. Hill says not one executive in 100 would refuse to investigate someone who applies with this kind of spirit. It immediately separates you from the crowd and puts you in a class by yourself. This isn't just a plan for getting a job. It's a philosophy for creating your own opportunities. As we wrap up our journey through this book, Hill elevates the whole philosophy to a higher plane. He argues that all these principles, from motive to mastermind, from persistence to promotion, are ultimately grounded in one timeless, universal law that governs all successful human relationships. It's the golden rule. But Hill presents it in a new light. He says most people misunderstand it as a moral duty you perform hoping for a reward in the afterlife. The real power of the golden rule, he argues, is practical and immediate. It means whatever we do to or for another, we do to or for ourselves. When you deal fairly with others, when you genuinely want to help them, you're not just being nice. You're creating a mental attitude within yourself that attracts friends, opportunities, and goodwill. The positive energy you put out comes back to you, not as some mystical karma, but in the practical form of trust, loyalty, and cooperation. He tells the story of Arthur Nash, a Cincinnati tailor whose business was on the edge of bankruptcy. As a last resort, when everything else had failed, he called in his employees and offered to make them all partners, sharing the profits if they'd pour their hearts into saving the company. They did. They worked not for wages, but for a shared goal. The business didn't just survive, it exploded, becoming one of the most successful of its kind. Golden Rule Nash, as he became known, got wealthy. What he did for his employees, he ultimately did for himself. This, Hill concludes, is the final secret. The greatest salespeople, the greatest leaders, the most successful people in any field, aren't the most cunning or ruthless. They're the ones who understand that the surest way to get what you want is to first dedicate yourself to helping other people get what they want. It's the foundation of all lasting success, a rule for winning friends that stood the test of more than 4,000 years. When you step back and think about it, it's pretty wild that this book was written almost a century ago. Hill penned it during the Great Depression, in an era of breadlines and economic despair, yet its message of self-reliance, strategic service, and the power of positive thinking feels like it was written yesterday. In our world of noise, uncertainty, and cutthroat competition, Hill's wisdom cuts through it all with simple, powerful clarity. For me, there are a few lessons that really stand out. The first is the radical reframing of what selling actually is. We're taught to think of life in little boxes: our job, our family, our hobbies. Hill smashes these walls and shows us that life is one continuous sales campaign. The product is you. Your ideas, your character, your skills, your vision. Every interaction is an opportunity to sell your value. This mindset doesn't make you manipulative. It makes you intentional. It forces you to ask, what value am I bringing here? How can I serve this person? How can I present my best self in a way that builds trust? When you start seeing life this way, every day becomes a chance to build your brand, your reputation, one interaction at a time. The second powerful idea is the focus on motive. In our data-obsessed world, we try to persuade people with logic, facts, and spreadsheets. Hill reminds us that humans aren't creatures of logic. We're creatures of emotion. People act because of how they feel. His breakdown of the 9 basic motives is like a master key to human nature. It teaches you to stop obsessing over your own needs. Your need to make the sale, land the job, win the argument, and focus entirely on the other person's deepest desires. When you connect what you're offering to their desire for freedom, security, love, or legacy, the sale practically makes itself. It becomes a natural, frictionless process of helping someone get what they already want. And finally, the principle of doing more than you're paid for. In a culture that often screams, do the bare minimum, this advice can sound crazy. But Hill frames it not as a path to getting walked over, but as the ultimate strategy for taking control of your destiny. It's an investment in your most valuable asset, your reputation. By consistently delivering more than expected, you make yourself indispensable. You build goodwill. You activate the law of increasing returns, ensuring that over time, your rewards will far exceed your efforts. It's a shift from a short-term, what can I get mindset to a long-term vision of what can I become. So how can you start using these ideas in your own life right now? Here are a few simple actions. First, conduct a time audit. Hill proposes a simple budget. 8 hours for sleep, 8 for work, and 8 for health, recreation, and study. For just 1 week, track your hours. Don't change anything yet. Just observe. Where's your time really going? How much goes to productive work? How much to genuine rest and improvement? How much is just lost? This simple awareness is the first step toward taking control of your most precious resource. Second, define one clear aim. You don't need your whole life mapped out, but what's the one most important thing you want to accomplish in the next year? Maybe it's getting into a certain school, learning a new skill, or starting a small project. Write it down. Make it your definite major aim. This clarity acts as a compass, guiding your decisions and focusing your energy. Third, go the extra mile, just once. This week, find one opportunity to do more than expected, without any thought of immediate reward. Stay late to help a coworker. Do an extra chore at home without being asked. Deliver a school project that goes way beyond the requirements. Do it for the sake of the act itself. Pay attention to how it makes you feel and how it changes the dynamic of your relationships. This is how you start building the habit that separates the extraordinary from the average. We've covered some incredible ideas today from how to sell your way through life, but I want to be honest. What we've discussed is just the map. The real treasure, the life-changing experience, is in reading the book itself. A summary gives you the landmarks, but it can't replicate the feeling of walking the path. The real magic happens in those quiet moments, when one of Hill's stories or a simple phrase hits you in a way you didn't expect. This overview is meant to help you decide if this journey is one you want to take. If anything we've talked about today has sparked something in you, I genuinely encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning techniques. It's an experience that can fundamentally change how you see yourself and your place in the world. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if this summary gave you something valuable, a simple like and subscribe would mean the world to us here at Billionaire's Bookshelf. It helps us know we're on the right track and makes sure you don't miss our next deep dive into another game-changing book. Let's keep building our mental fortunes together